12.1 is just going to be a review on solving quadratics. So we're going to solve the quadratic equation using factoring or the quadratic formula. So to start, we are going to factor this first one. When you are factoring, we are going to be factoring it into two sets of parentheses. So when we are looking at it, if our first term is just an x squared, then we can just have x's at the beginning. But because this one is a 7x squared, we know we have to pick two numbers to go in front of the x's that multiply together to be 7. And the only two numbers for that are 7 and 1. So then the last two numbers in each set of parentheses, you need to figure out what two numbers are going to multiply together to be negative 20. So if we list out factors of 20, we could have 20 and 1, 4 and 5, 2 and 10, and I think that is it. Okay, so then we are going to plug those numbers into our parentheses, and we're going to kind of guess and check to figure out how we're going to get to negative 31x when we distribute. So we need to figure out, because it's negative 31x, I'm going to assume that we're going to need more negatives when we distribute. So I'm going to put the negative in the second set of parentheses, because when we distribute, we're going to multiply this negative 7 by whatever value is there. So my first guess, if we do 2 and 10, so let's say we have 2 and 10 there. If we were to check this answer, we're going to just distribute 7x times 7 is our 7x squared. 7x times negative 10 is negative 70x. 2 times x is a positive 2x. And 2 times negative 10 is negative 20. So if we look, we've got the negative 7x squared part correct and the negative 20 part correct. But if we were to combine our like terms in the middle, that does not add up to negative 31. That ends up being negative 68x, which we know is not correct. So we're going to change our guess from 2 and 10. Maybe let's try the other way, with 10 being positive and the 2 being negative. So if we check this one, we would have our 7x squared, that stays the same. Then we would have negative 14x and positive 10x. And the negative 20 stays the same. This one, when we look again, are combining like terms. They do not add up to be negative 31. They end up being negative 4x. So we know for sure that 2 and 10 are not going to be our answers. So we're going to go back. We're going to try our different one. Let's try 4 and 5. So we can have 7x plus 4, 7x minus 5. Oh, sorry, not 7, just a 1x minus 5. Okay, so if we try this one, we would get 7x squared minus 35x plus 4x minus 20. So if we look, we have our 7x squared and our minus 20 from our equation that we need. And we're going to just check what is negative 35x plus 4x. And that is our negative 31x, which is what we were looking for. So then we know our factored answer is going to be 7x plus 4 times x minus 5. And that would be our factored answer. If you know other methods for how to factor, you can use those as well. But we are just going to be going over the guess and check one. Okay, so if we look at example 2, we have a 2x squared. There are only two numbers that can be multiplied together to get 2x squared, and that's 2x and x. This time it multiplies to be a positive value, so they're both going to be pluses. And they're going to add together to be 17. This one might be easier because the only factors of 21 are 21 and 1 or 7 and 3. So if we try, I'm going to go with the 7 and 3 first. So let's try with 7 with the 2x and 3 with x. And if we check our answer, we would get 2x squared plus 6x plus 7x plus 21. But if we combine our like terms here, that's only 13x. So we don't quite have enough. So I'm going to go and I'm going to switch the order. So 3 is with the 2x. And I'm going to see if that's our correct answer. So we would have a 2x squared plus 14x plus a 3x plus 21. And this one, when we go and combine our like terms, you'll see that this ends up being 17x, which is what we want. So that tells us our final answer is 2x plus 3 times x plus 7. And if you feel comfortable with these, then you are good to go. You can skip to the last part with the quadratic formula if you would like. If you need more practice, you can go ahead and try this one as well. 5x squared means we have a 5x and an x. And this time they are multiplying to be a negative 18. So we know one positive and one is negative. That means we have a little bit more options. And when we distribute, we only want a negative x. So let's see, list out our factors of 18. We have 18 and 1, and then we would have 2 and 9, 3 and 6. So at this point, you can choose whichever one you want to start with. Let's try 3 and 6. Let's go with that one. So let's try a positive 3 and a negative 6. See if that works. And when we distribute, we would have our 5x squared minus 30x plus 3x minus 18. So this one, these two are too far apart, so that's not going to be an option. We could try switching our numbers around. So we would have a 6 and a 3 there. When we distribute here, we would have a 5x squared minus 15x plus 6x minus 18. Kind of close, but not quite. This time, instead of switching to a different one, let's try switching the signs. What if we make the first one negative and the second one positive? If we did that, we would get 5x squared plus 15x minus 6x, and that one's still not going to be close enough because there's more than one difference in that. Okay, and if we were to do it with the other one, it would still end up being the same. So let's try 2 and 9. So let's put a minus 9 and a plus 2. Let's try that. So if we try this, we're going to end up with 5x squared plus 10x minus 9x minus 18. And this one, our x terms have a difference of 1, except it would be a positive 1. So we're very close. So let's try just switching our positives and our negatives around. So we'll make the 9 negative and the 2 positive. Oh, sorry, that's what it was last time. So we'll make the 9 positive and the 2 negative this time. So if we do that, we would end up with 5x squared minus 10x plus 9x minus 18. And that combines to negative 1x, which is what we want. So our final answer is 5x plus 9 times x minus 2. Okay, so that's just a review on factoring with guess and check method. The next one is the quadratic formula. When you're doing the quadratic formula, you get 2 answers. Or you could get 1 answer, or you could get no solution. So if we look at the first one, when you're doing quadratic formula, one side of the equation has to equal 0. So we're going to subtract x on both sides to get 2x squared minus x minus 36. When you have a quadratic equation, you have an a, b, and a c value. and they always go in order when you have x squared, x, and then your constant. These are the values that are going to go into the quadratic formula. So we're going to just replace all of these with what the variable is equal to. So we're going to have negative b, which is -1. So we're going to have -1 plus or minus the square root of -1 squared minus 4 times our a value of 2 times our c value of -36. And then this is all going to go over our 2a value, or 2 times 2. Now, if you were typing this into your calculator, you either need to put parentheses around the top or do the steps separately so that you end up with the correct answer for the quadratic formula. So we're going to type this top part into our calculator to figure out what that equals. So we're going to have -1. And then we're going to do it first where we add, and then once where we subtract. So this one's going to be our adding, this one's going to be our subtracting answer. So we're going to do plus the square root of -1 squared, and you need to make sure you put this in parentheses, otherwise it's not going to square with the negative. And then we have 4 times 2 times -36. And that's going to give us the answer of 18. So we know the top part is going to be 18 over 2 times 2 is 4. Then we're going to go back, and instead of adding the square root, we're going to subtract it. And when we do that, we get the top number of -16. And the bottom will still be 4. So you are going to end up with 2 different answers. One where you add the square root and one where you subtract it. And when you get a fraction as an answer, don't forget to simplify your work. So this one's going to be 9 over 2. And then -4. And those are our 2 possible answers. Okay. So if you remember the quadratic formula, you can skip the rest. But if you feel like you need more practice, you can continue to watch the video. Okay, for example 2, we're going to move everything over to the same side, so we're going to add 4. So we would have 5x squared plus 9x plus 4, and that will be equal to 0. And again, this gives us our a, b, and c values. So using the quadratic formula, we have x equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times our a value times our c value, all over 2 times our a value. And again, we're going to do this once where we're adding the square root and once where we're subtracting. So we're getting 2 different answers. So I'm going to type in the top part where we're adding the square root first. And ooh, too many parentheses, sorry. Parentheses times 4. So when we do that, we're going to end up with -8 over 10. And then we're going to change it so we are subtracting the square root instead of adding. And that's going to give us -10 over 10. When we simplify, we're going to get -4/5 and then -1 for our 2 answers. Okay. So again, if you feel confident with your quadratic formula, you can stop the video or you can continue to watch the last example. So this one, we have our a, b, and c values given to us already. So we're going to just plug that into our quadratic formula. So we're going to have -b or -2 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times our a value times our c value, all over 2a. So we're going to have -2, and we're going to start by adding first, plus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times 2 times -12. This one we're going to get 8 over 2 times 2 is 4. And then we're going to do once where we are subtracting the square root. So we're just going to change that addition to a subtraction, and that gives us -12 on top over 4. So when we simplify, we're going to get our answers of 2 and -3. There we go. So that was just a quick review on factoring and the quadratic formula. You can choose whichever one you want. You can always use the quadratic formula. You can only sometimes factor. So choose whichever method works best.